Hey, hello, good morning, guys. This is Coding with Gautam, and today we will be doing the Loops Explore, Loops Investigate, Loops Practice, and Loops Make in Unit 6 Computer Science Principles AP. So, without any further ado, let us dive in. So, when breaking a problem down, you often encounter elements that you want to use repeatedly in your code. Sometimes it's appropriate to write a new function, at other times it's appropriate to write a loop. There is no hard and fast rule to which is better, but what do you think? What kinds of circumstances would lead you to writing a function versus using a loop? So, I would like to see you guys answer this in the comments. I want to see what you guys think, but this is just your personal opinion, so I won't be covering that. But let us do the loops investigate. So, on the app. So, what information does the user input? How does the app process that information? And what information does the app output? So, let's run this. Okay, so coin flip simulator. Choose the total number of flips. Let's say we flip 6 times. We do that. So, as you can see, we input the number of flips we want. Then after we click this, we get a sound effect, and then it randomly generates two numbers that add up to 6. So, yeah. So, what is being repeated? Where's the opportunity to lose a loop? Well, we can use a loop. The sound is being repeated. Second of all, well, one thing that's also being repeated is that both of these being added up to 6. And what information does the app output? The total number of heads from the flips and total number of tails. So, with those observations, we can now move on to step 2. Step 2. Run the program, watch the code run, and carefully read each individual part of the program. Discuss these questions with a partner and be prepared to share the answer with the class. Run the program for 10, 100, 1000, and 10,000. When do you notice it taking longer? And on what lines of code does the program use loop? What lines of code decide how many times to flip the coin? What does the plus plus command seem to do? And if time allows, make the following modifications to the program. So, let's see. Let's decipher the code. First, we have the variable heads and tails. So basically, these are supposed to count the number of heads and tails we see. Of course, they're at 0, and then total number of flips at 0. So on event, we click the coin. As you can see, the ID is coin. Once we click it, heads and tails equals 0. Total flips equals you get the number of flip nums, as you can see that right here. And then, as a for loop, if you know how a for loops work, basically you do for, you create a placeholder variable j, and then while j is less than the number of total flips, you add 1. And remember, the plus plus command means you increment 1 every time you do the loop. So then you do a flip where you use the random function to find a random number between 0 and 1. If it's 0, you increase heads, and else you increase tails. And then you play the sound, and then you update the screen. So what is update screen? Update screen is where you update the user interface by changing the ID total heads and total tails to the amount we saw. So now that we understand the code, let's do this. So run this program for 10. That was fairly quick. Let's go for 100. That was also pretty quick. Let's go for 1000. Yeah, that's pretty fast. Let's try 10,000. As you can see, it starts to take time. It's not as fast as before. There is lagging, but then let's go to 1 million. I think we broke the program. But then let's go back to the discussion. So when you could see it's taking longer because the code needs to go through and do a flip about 1,000 times and 10,000 times. And since we're using a computer, it's done fairly fast. But then, what lines of code is using a loop? Well, you can clearly see a for loop here. You can see an if and else loop. And then, yeah, that's it. Then, on what lines of code does decide how many times to flip the coin? Where you said total flips equal where you get the number of flip nums. So what does the command plus plus seem to do? It adds 1 every time. And if you change the variable from I to j in appropriate places, it still works because j is just a placeholder. You could do that right now. And guess what? The code still runs. Oh, the code still runs fine. It's because j is a placeholder and you just change it to I. So that was pretty simple. Let's go on to the loop investigation, part 3, where we do the font tester. So run the program, watch the code run, and carefully read each part of the individual program. Discuss these questions with a partner and be prepared to share with the answers with the class. Find 4 different loops in the program. What do they do? Take a look at the names of the screen elements, then navigate back to the code. What happens if it takes the text ID, text box ID names? What happens if it changes the Boolean expressions to that, and then modify? So this seems to be a pretty large deck of code, but let's see if we can interact with the app. So, font tester, enter my own phrase. Let's say, 1 plus 1. You can see that it shows us in different fonts. Then we can choose to increase the size. We get a sound effect. Then we could choose to generate a random phrase. And yeah, pretty simple app. And then we can also change the color to orange to red. Guess what? For some reason, Courier doesn't work. Let's see if we can try to fix that. So the phrases we have when we click randomly generate phrases is the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. To be or not to be is the question. More other phrases. And yeah. So on the event, we click the text input, which is the text input is here. So when we click the text input, then on event we start putting stuff into the text input. So for a for loop where every time I is equal to 0 and I less than 5, then you keep incrementing, you set the property text plus I text get text input. What is this? So basically when we run, you can see it keeps updating every time we add a letter. That is what we're trying to do here. So every time we add a letter, I increments. This is because we get set the property text plus I to text. So if I put A equals text, but then when I add B, you add the second letter, which is I, then you get AB, and then you get the text from text input. So pretty simple. Then the font slider, same thing. You do another for loop. You set property text I font size, so you keep increasing the number, you get more font size. So when I move the slider by 1, I get a higher font size. When I move it down, I get a less font size. So this is the font slider. This is the sound they play. And then on event, we click the color drop down. It changes the input to 4. And then for var I equals 0, I less than 4, and I plus plus, it does text I, text color, color drop down. Now that I'm going over this, I realize that I have been mistaken. You can see that when we do set property, these are actually called text 0, text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4. What we're doing is we're setting text 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, the input text, not incrementing it. We do the same here. We do text 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we change this to 5, it should start working. And then same here. So that was a mishap on my part. But coding is all about learning from your mistakes. So let's type my name. Let's change to orange. You can see everything works fine. And it's all good. So then from the on event, we click the random phrase. It chooses a random phrase from the phrase by choosing a random number and then indexing it. Then for each box of text, you set the property. So 4 different loops. We see a for loop. We see 4 different loops, 4 different for loops. And then each of them, they increment I, so that you can, instead of typing text 0, text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4, it automatically just goes from text 0, text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4 without complicating the code. Then take a look at the names of the scream element. How is text I used? It basically does the thing I just said. If you change the text box names, it could still work, because all you have to do is just put text box here, change these to text box, and it would still work. And then if we do all that, you can see that it would go only to 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then after that, we're done with this. Then we can go to the last one. So think back to the Font Tester app. Can you think of an example of another app or feature of an app which would use loop to control different elements of the screen? Think about this, and then I would like to see your answer in the comments. Now we've successfully finished Lemon 6 Loops Investigate. Let's do the loops practice in part 2. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe. This is Coding with Gautam, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.